Hello, and welcome to the War Room. This will be episode 2, and I did not expect to have more than one episode, but here we are, episode 2. It came to me today, as we did yesterday's episode, that we should probably do this every day until we actually conclude hostilities between Russia and the Ukraine. So that's what me and my panel are going to do today. And I know you can't see them, but you will soon. So, without further ado, I'm going to start dragging my panelists in so you can see them. But we are here. Let me get this set up properly because I forgot to do that. Here we are. You might have noticed that the backdrop's a little different. You also might have noticed that I finally fixed the chat to work too. So anyway, let me go ahead and start pulling these folks in. So my first panelist here, because he doesn't talk very much, this is Galileon Gonzalez. If you were a former member of Gun Channels, you would know him as Zorro117. He is out in the west coast of California, but he's not a libtard, and he is actually a farmer and a rancher and a man of the... He puts his hands in the earth, so he's just as blue collar as the rest of you. So that's who I've got here first.
Hello.
Hello. Next up, I've got... You would probably know this from Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock. This here is Mike, also known as Night Strike. You would hear him on the... Wow, sorry, I just brain farted.
Hit or miss Tuesday
Hit or
nights,
miss, Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock. Generally, he has a Thursday or Friday, sometimes a Saturday, and rarely a Sunday night strike. But because we started doing this particular format, because I thought it was very important to cover this, he has graciously joined us for Friday night. So,
And
hello, Mike.
yeah, hey, thanks for the invite. From now on, I'm posting whenever we do this War Room chat. I'm posting it on my community page on my YouTube channel.
Excellent. So we're simulcasting
everyone
across
that
2 channels.
watches me, if you came here from my channel, just subscribe to Sean. We'll be here until the rest of this is over.
Awesome. So we're simulcasting basically on
Not
2 channels.
simulcasting. I'm just posting the link.
Okay, fair enough. Next up,
That's a pain in the ass.
Next up, I've got Scott P79, our New Englander who is quite familiar with like Cold War hardware, and usually my cohort on the week in review, which I'm not 100% sure if we're going to do a show tomorrow because of this current situation. Keep posted if you see the update for that. You will see that, and then you'll see that we will do the week in review. But if I don't do one, don't be surprised, just because I think the conflict in the Ukraine basically takes precedence over everything else right now, because what we're witnessing is literally history. So, good evening, Scott.
Evening.
And my final panelist tonight, which joined us graciously yesterday, was Warsaw Patriot, and you've probably seen him also either through Night Strike's podcast or even through like Zeke Shoots podcast. So he is quite familiar with ComBlock hardware, and he is a Pole with a very unique opinion on geopolitical information. So we're very gracious and glad to have him here.
Thank you.
So good evening. All right, so initially, like I had started in the intro, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to sustain this war room format, but the more that I started to look into the nuances and details of the information coming in throughout the day, this is easy to collate information. So
It's been a roller coaster.
yeah,
It really has.
it has, and it's very easy for us to be able to bring this to you. So maybe you don't watch mass media or you pay attention to the headlines or whatever, which is fine. A lot of you have subscribed to any one of us, either through our 2A advocacy or our popularity with like gun reviews or gear reviews,
Or some of our other friends.
or some of our other friends. Some of us even do stuff like video game chats or whatever. It's just, I thought that maybe it wouldn't be appropriate right now, considering that there are people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people right now are affected by what's going on, suffering and whatnot. That
Could have talked about Cold War video games. That would have been appropriate.
maybe it's just right now, entertainment is probably the last thing on a lot of
I know.
people's minds if
I
you're
know.
in the Crimea. So anyway, I did fix the chat, so if you are part of the chat now, I will see it in real time. We should be able to respond to you correctly and properly and effectively. So hopefully that works out properly for you. I didn't originally plan on playing around with the backgrounds and whatnot, but this helped me fix the chat. Today, for those of you who may have been living under a rock or are a political ostrich or a news ostrich with your head in the sand, is day 2, the second full day of actual hostilities from the Russian Federation incurring into a sovereign territory known as Ukraine. We have been told for weeks, if not months, no, it's perfectly fine. The Russians are just doing exercises. They're not going to actually do this. They look what they did in Georgia. You know, they just threatened and flexed, and people would just give in to their demands. Uh, but then there are people like me and probably many of my panelists here who said, look, you can go on living in fairy tale land thinking that things will never happen, but the reality of the situation is people like us always stop and go, but what if? And because we have been but what if, we are part of team we told you so, while the rest of the other people are part of team it'll never happen. And we can tell these people who have defected from team it'll never happen, welcome to reality. We're glad to have you here. Hopefully you won't be so clouded and jaded the next time this happens. Either way, we're here to tell you and to give you a broad overview of day 2 of the Russian incursion into the Ukraine, because eventually this will affect each and every one of you in some facet of your life. Whether you're an investor, whether you have to fill your tank to go to work, whether you are a manufacturer, or maybe you're a local politician and your constituents are going to stop and ask you, what are you going to do about this? Now, for me, personally, I live in the 4th largest populated city in the United States. It is also infested with liberalism, despite the fact that I'm in a red state, which is bleeding a very dangerous shade of purple. That alone should tell you where I am. I'm not going to tell you, because you probably heard me say it before, but if you didn't, what I just told you should be obvious. 4th largest city, red state turning purple. Now you know where I am. Either way, we've got a lot to cover today, and I was not sure that this was even a thing, because I wasn't sure if we were going to have enough material. And thankfully, there was, because a lot has happened today. Today we're going to cover something known as Article 5 of the Nato Doctrine. And you may not know what that is, but by the end of this podcast, you will be intimately familiar with it. And you may even start asking your local leaders, why aren't you pushing this? Or, if you are in the constituency of one Lindsey Graham or one Rand Paul, you might ask, why the hell did you prevent this to help avoid what we're going through right now? So if you're not familiar, there are about 30 countries involved in NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, something like that, right? Sorry, I should have probably looked that up. Anyway, there are about 30 countries involved in this. To be able to join NATO, you have to fulfill a very specific set of criteria in a very specific time frame and interval set by the rules of NATO. Unfortunately, given a situation like the one we're currently in, those rules should be thrown right out of the window, because the situation we're in right now may or may not have been easily avoided by allowing Ukraine into NATO. So, the way it works is once you are a member of NATO, if any foreign power in or in attacks you or incurs into your space, they violate Article 5 of NATO Doctrine, which states that any nation involved in NATO that has been attacked by a foreign power will incur the wrath of all 30 active nations of NATO. So if we had listened to Zelensky, President Zelensky, who had begged NATO to hold an emergency ballot, like sort of like a hardship license, to bring them in, then what could have happened is NATO and Zelensky could have simply just called Vladimir Putin's bluff. Because the thing he was afraid of the most is Ukraine being a salient that digs into the core of the continent of Asia and within missile striking range of Moscow. See, his whole claim is that if Ukraine was in NATO and we started putting missiles into the Ukraine, that's too close to his capital city and that's too dangerous for him to have. So either we will not allow Ukraine into NATO, or they should be left alone as like a neutral buffer. That last part that I just said didn't actually become a possibility technically until today. So we'll get into that. The problem is Putin says the Ukraine should never be allowed into NATO because of his concerns with the missiles, right? Our response immediately should have been, okay, he's got the Eye of Sauron on this country that has been a thorn in his side since 2014. We should have immediately brought them into NATO. Because had he done anything at that point afterwards, he would have to deal with all of us. The United States, Germany, France, Canada, everybody, all the NATO nations. He would have to deal with all of that. He would not be able to stomach that kind of conflict. But the fact that we have waffled about and said, well, we'd love to have you, but we can't have you. The Ukraine right now, as of this moment, 8:54 p.m. Central Standard Time in the United States, which is 4:54 a.m. local Ukrainian time. These poor people, not financially, these poor souls are left to fend for themselves, street by street, hour by hour, minute by minute, alone. And we will cover that tonight because I've got updates for you as of a few minutes ago that proves that the Russian military will not let the Ukrainians sleep. And they are fighting right now as we are on this podcast, fighting for their lives. And we have done not a fucking thing about it. And that's insulting. So, Article 5, in general, if you're part of NATO and a foreign power attacks you, then you have to deal with all of NATO. That's not what the Russians want. That's exactly what we should have given them. We should have called their bluff and say, we just made the Ukraine part of NATO. Your move, Skeletor. And he would have to make a decision if he wanted to fight a war against 30 other nations. Granted, the United States has had a history of sticking its nose in global affairs businesses for 90 years, 80 years. And a lot of people here would say that's not our job, but this is the job we are known for, and this is sort of the job we're stuck doing now because of it. And yet all of a sudden now we're not doing it. What this does is it creates resentment by the nation that we will eventually have to save. And this is not a new concept. This is something that this country has done since 1912. which is why yesterday's episode was What is Old is New Again. You have the Russians using the Nazi Germany playbook from 1939 during their incursion and blitzkrieg of Poland. You have the Chinese playing the Japanese imperial playbook of war in 1938 with their idea of island hopping and taking over Taiwan, threatening Australia, wanting all the energy and oil fields of Southeast Asia. They do not need a blue water navy to accomplish any of that, because they will constantly be in the continental shelves of all those territories, which means they don't have to go very deep. So you got that going on. And yet, the United States is playing out of the isolationist, separatist, capitalist vulture playbook of 1912. Let's just sit back and go, oh, it's okay. You're in our thoughts and prayers. By the way, here's some helmets. And if you want to buy some oil from us, we got that too. You need some guns? We'll sell that to you too. Ever the vulture capitalistic animals that the world would see us as. We're playing right back into that because we're right now led by an idiot. And we'll get into that tonight too. So, we've got a lot of stories to cover, and today I will start with Finland and Sweden, Scandinavian states, have sent in formal requests, and this is not the first time they've done this, but this is the next time they've done this. They have sent in formal requests seeing the current geopolitical climate and requested to be fast-track accepted into NATO to hedge their defenses against a Russian incursion. Now, realistically speaking, Finland and Sweden are not in Vladimir Putin's immediate plans. He wants to take over the Ukraine. He wants to take all the Baltic states and bring them back to heel. He wants to basically rip the umbrella away from the NATO coverage of all the separatist countries that he has lost starting in 1986. And he wants to bring them back under the Iron Curtain of the Warsaw Pact, essentially, right? He wants to get them back to he wants to bring them back to at least 1986. Sweden and Finland would be the conquest after that. But Sweden and Finland can see the wood for the trees. And they're like, listen, we know how long NATO slow walks these processes. Let's just get into this now, and let's get involved now, and get protected now before it hits our doorstep. Because otherwise, it'll be too late, like it is for the Ukraine. It's too late for them now. Because all we're just sitting there doing is watching from afar and saying, you have our thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers do nothing when men and women and children are dying. Wholesale, day to day, minute to minute, hour to hour in the Ukraine. Sanctions do nothing at the combat soldier level, does it? Nothing. You cannot sanction a soldier in the Ukraine to stop killing Ukrainians when you impose those sanctions. That soldier's being paid to kill Ukrainians. He's not being paid to sell oil. He's not being paid to sell electronics. He's just a grunt. And to quote, like, Benjamin Franklin Pierce from MASH, I'm just a draftee. I don't even want to be here. But it's a paycheck. Now, in Pierce's situation, he was drafted, right? Some of these guys in the Russian military, it's a job. And it's a shitty one right now for them. They don't want to be there. But they're there because they swore an oath, right? Sanctions don't do shit to those guys. It's the guys that his superiors have to answer to, who have to answer to somebody else. That's who a sanction actually damages. You have a commander-in-chief here in the United States going, let's just sit around and see how this works out in 30 days, right? 30 days from now, those women and children and elderly people that are hiding in the Ukrainian metro tunnels will have either starved or frozen to death.
Or killed.
Or killed. What good are sanctions to that person at ground and street level? Just give me an answer. There ain't one. So, that's what we've got so far. Finland and Sweden have requested a fast track to be accepted into NATO because obviously they recognize that it's too late for the Ukraine. Fine. Article 5 gives a NATO protected nation the protections of 30 NATO nations. And that's what they want because the Ukrainians couldn't get it in time. And this is one of those cases where even people in the controlling party that I might currently support because I align better with them than the other side because we have this stupid two-party system that everyone seems to think is so fucking great.
It's not.
It's not. And if you are in the constituency of Rand Paul or Lindsey Graham, you should be putting boots to ass to both of those retards for being adamantly denying of the admission of the Ukraine in NATO.
I've already sent him a mean voicemail.
Maybe that's some harsh words from a guy like me, but I see it for what it is. I see the wood for the trees. Those two have deliberately, basically, sentenced the Ukraine to die. Now, they did it because they didn't want to get us involved, but apparently they're not very good students of history. Because the longer we ignore this global conflict, the worse it's going to get for us later to have to clean this shit up anyway. Because we have a history of sticking our noses in global affairs. Which means we're going to get involved eventually. It's undeniable. It's our destiny. This nation has a destiny of sticking its nose into other people's business because that's how we earn loyalty. We buy it or we bleed for it. Because apparently we think we're better than everyone else in that regard. And I don't like it, and maybe you don't like me for saying it, but it doesn't change the reality of it. A lot of young people are going to die because we fucked around too long and made this fight a whole lot harder to clean up. Like, this could have been much easier to deal with. But by the time this is over, the government and the power of Ukraine will fall. The people will be beaten. They will have a resentment to NATO for coming in late. Then we'll come in. The battle will take longer. More of your sons and your daughters and your fathers and your uncles will die having to clean it up. All just to say, hey, we cleaned up your mess. You owe us now. That's what NATO does. It cleans up the mess at the expense of your sons, your daughters, your fathers, your brothers, your aunts, your uncles, your mothers. They make the fight harder so they can make the debt worse for the nation they supposedly save. That's the business of diplomacy. It's disgusting. So let's get into the updates of the Ukraine attacks today. This is day 2. Technically, if you are local, it's the morning of day 3. Right now, at the time of me saying this, it's 5:05 a.m. Saturday Ukraine time. They have been attacked and besieged in the capital city of Kiev. The Russian armored divisions that came in through Belarus are now in the city. Fighting is street to street. You have the president of Ukraine basically saying, I'm here and I will fight to the death. He will become a martyr for what he believes in and his people and his sovereignty. You have, I think it's Vladimir. There's 2. There's Vladimir and Vitaly, so you'll have to excuse me for forgetting the 2. The Klitschko, mayor of Kiev, heavyweight champion of the world boxing for 15 plus years undefeated, right? That guy is now the mayor of Kiev. That man is fighting not only for his life, but his city's life and his country's life. Could you imagine what PR disaster the world would see if an actor and comedian turned prime minister of Ukraine dies because he's public enemy number one and his family is murdered, similar to, say, oh, I don't know, the Russians during the Bolshevik Revolution, like Tsar Nicholas getting killed and all his family getting killed? Could you imagine if this guy, who's a beloved public figure, who actually turned out to be a good leader and a patriot, gets killed? And a world heavyweight boxing champion known worldwide getting killed for defending his country against a foreign fucking invader? What do you think the PR fallout of that's going to be for us, for NATO? You let those people die. That's what they're going to say to us. They're going to spit on blue helmets. Why did you wait so long? Good people had to die. And our answer will be, well, people die in war, don't they? Because that's how cold we are. We'll solve it later, and it'll look uglier, and the fight will be 100 times worse, but eventually we'll prevail, and then that nation will be beholden and indebted to us for millennia. But the people will hate us for it. This is what they call nation building. It's disgusting. So, let's get into the details. Russian military from the north entered Kiev. The city is expected to fall within the next 48 to 72 hours. This was what we told you yesterday. This was the armored divisions and about 20,000-ish troops that pushed in from Belarus, which is to the northwestern border of the Ukraine. A question needs to be asked here. Why are we not sanctioning? Because apparently that's the only thing we can do. Why aren't we sanctioning and basically lumping in Belarus as an accessory to murder? Because that's what they are. Belarus is led by a Russian puppet, and he has allowed a foreign military to occupy his border so they can use it as a staging area, and now they are in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev. That's what's happening right now. There are tanks, there's artillery, there are people dying right now. Most analysts are saying 2 to 3 days, maybe 4, maybe by Monday. That's what's going on. Russian Marines have been deployed on the southeast coast, west of Mariupol, which is another major coastal city on the Black Sea, for an amphibious assault landing. The amphibious assault landing was predicated by 200 caliber missile strikes to soften up the target before the Marines landed. So now you've got the northwest being attacked and the southeast being attacked. They're trying to link up with the eastern forces of the Russian military that pushed into the Ukraine from the east. Numbers aren't in for that success or failure yet. So Ukrainian state TV had originally claimed that it had killed 800 troops, destroyed 30 tanks, downed 7 jets and 2 helicopters on the first day of the invasion. The numbers were hard to verify. They're hard to corroborate, and they're sort of hard to basically prove. But this is a propaganda war, right? So the Ukrainians are going to tell you high numbers, and the Russians are going to tell you low numbers to try to keep you from thinking it's as bad as it is, or it's as good as it is, depending on which side of this you're on. Now we're going to talk about the Snake Island 13.
The heroes.
Heroes.
Snake Island.
Absolute heroes. This is being compared to, in modern and Western culture, as the Battle of the Alamo. There were 13 soldiers who were stationed on a tiny little island that's called Snake Island, and the Russian Navy had sent out a communique to this island saying, We are coming on. Lay down your weapons and nobody will get hurt. This is the same Russian military that said, we're not going to enter the Ukraine. We don't know what you're talking about. This is the same Russian military that is led ultimately by Vladimir Putin, who, I will admit, once upon a time, I thought was a brilliant leader. Some of you in the Week in Review probably heard me say, I admire Vladimir Putin. That is what a leader looks like. That's what a leader sounds like. He's action man. He's Blofeld. He rides horses. He goes bare-chested. He takes submarines to look at shipwrecks. It's like, those things all sound cool.
And
But
now we should slap you silly for it.
well, no, but now he's 70 years old, and he's bitter, and he's angry, and he may not be in full control of his mental facilities if we're led to believe what we're being told. Because he's trying to rearrange the map of the world back to 1986. Because once upon a time, this man was head of the Stasi in East Germany. And the beginning of the end was the fall of the Berlin Wall for this guy. And every single thing that happened afterwards has been an insult to him. And he wants to fix it to the way it was before he dies. And to be perfectly honest, he is the most experienced world leader in the world right now. 22 years experience, 5 U.S. presidential administrations. He knows the game better than anyone else in the world as a leader. And yet, he may be just as mentally dilapidated as Joe Biden, honestly. Because this is not the decision making of a sound mind. It just isn't. Anyway, Russian Navy put out an ultimatum to these guys. Maybe you have seen the video. I really wish I could play it for you. I would have prepared it, but I suspect that it would be hit with a copyright strike, so I can't. But if you just do a little research and look it up, you'll see the video. Russian Navy makes their demands. You hear this back and forth banter between the Ukrainian soldiers on the island, and they all come to agreement, and they respond, "Go fuck yourselves."
No. They click up the volume just you can hear it too, and then they say that.
They tell the Russian military to go fuck themselves. Shortly afterwards, the island's bombarded. 13 men have died. The Ukrainian leadership will probably posthumously award them Hero of the Ukraine, which is basically their equivalent of the Hero of the Soviet Union award. Because
President
Or
Zelensky's
our Medal of
already
Honor.
called them heroes.
I don't know
He
if it
already
would
made
be
a
the
peace
same
vow.
as our Medal of Honor. Maybe our Medal of Valor.
It's the highest award they can get, so
Okay, so it's definitely up there. So we've got this going on. We call them the Snake Island 13. They have become legends overnight. There are memes of it. There are people requesting and demanding t-shirts and stickers and patches. If somebody makes a patch of the outline of Snake Island with the words "Go fuck yourselves" in Cyrillic, I will buy one.
Well, I mean, this is also like that movie Red Dawn where this is Wolverines, except Ukrainians saying "fuck you."
No, you see, I think the analogy and the parallel between what happened on Snake Island and what happened at the Alamo is very accurate. In the Alamo, it was, 180-ish defenders versus Santa Anna's entire army of, 5,000 or 6,000 at the time, plus cannon. And these guys had a few cannons and a bunch of muskets, essentially. It's the same thing. Snake Island was 13 men against the Russian Navy, artillery. They didn't stand a chance. They knew they were going to die. Even if they surrendered, they would have been executed.
Yeah.
Russians have no regard for human life. Period. End of story. I'll fight you over that. I'm not a little guy. I'll win. Anyway, moving on. Adding
I
to
don't
the
know.
statistics from day one, Ukrainian officials have updated their statistics. Now, the count is 30 tanks, 130 armored personnel vehicles. You're probably seeing that scroll across the bottom of your screen right now. That number there, the 130 armored personnel vehicles, that's the important one. Because I happen to have a coworker who fought in Bosnia and Croatia and Herzegovina, and he was basically bred to fight Ruskies, communism. And so he knows the hardware. And I asked him today, and I said, 130 APCs. He goes, yep. I said, how many soldiers, including the driver, are in one APC? And the number sort of varied because there's several models. But if we were to sort of take the highs and the lows and throw them out and round it out, he said about 8 to 10 soldiers or 10 personnel per carrier. Which means, let's take 10 times the 130. That would mean that the Ukrainians wiped out 1,300 soldiers just taking out armored personnel carriers. That's not a number to scoff at. That's pretty impressive.
No, it's not.
That's a lot in one day. They also shot down 7 fighter jets and 6 helicopters. Contrary to popular belief, the Ukrainian Air Force has not been obliterated. Some of the air defenses have been wiped out, but for instance, sorry, I had the name of the airport. The air base that was wiped out.
Antonov?
Now, Antonov was the airport, but the air base starts with a G. They recaptured that in 2 hours after they lost it. 2 hours. So what I suspected happened is they set a trap. They pulled a tactical retreat when the Russians moved in. Russians claimed victory. 2 hours later, they got snapped in a bear trap. There was, what was it, several dozen Russian armored division personnel surrendered. Like, fuck it, we don't want this. We don't want this smoke, right? They surrendered, which means these traps were laid perfectly. They got the airport back, which means air defenses could maybe come back online. I'm not going to speculate. Let's just say maybe. We also know that the use of javelins by the Ukrainian military have been incredibly effective. I mean, 30 tanks and 130 armored personnel carriers. That's the kind of weapon where you have to laze the target and hold it there until the warhead hits it, right?
No, javelins are fire and forget.
Right,
Yeah.
but you have to target it and then hit the button.
Yeah, once you target it and hit the button,
Then you can drop it.
shoot and scoot.
Sure, but that's a one-shot weapon, right?
Yeah, but it's a matter of just clicking on the control and targeting unit onto a new tube.
That's fine. My point is it's a one-shot weapon. You aim it, you lock it, you fire it, you drop it, and you run off, right?
Yep.
Which means they used 160 of them in 48 hours. That's impressive.
I bet you they used more than that.
Maybe, but that's still very impressive.
Oh yeah.
All right. Let's continue on. So, statistically, from the UK Defense Secretary today, 450 Russian troops were killed as Ukrainian resistance see Putin's failure on the first day of the invasion. Now, we gave you the numbers yesterday of Ukrainian losses. It was like 57 killed, 160 wounded, and 137 civilians killed. We finally got Russian casualty numbers from the UK Defense Ministry, 450. That was day one. That was before the 130 armored personnel carriers got knocked out. Also, that was before all the tanks got knocked out. Because if I remember right, yesterday it was only, 8 tanks or 15 tanks? Now it's 30. Now, tank crew is anywhere between 3 and 5. So you had 1,300 from APCs, and then you had, let's just use the big number, 5, right? That's 150 troops, 30 tanks, 5 crew. Driver, commander, gunner, loader, radio man. That's a reasonable crew right there, okay? Some tanks, you double up. Some tanks, the loader's also the radio man, because all he's got to do is load shells, so he's got time to work
Oh, a lot of the
things.
Russian tanks have auto loaders. They love the auto loaders.
Not like the French did. The
Oh
French,
no, the Russians
French were big on it.
love them even more.
But the point is you got crews, right? So, like, I think a T-62 actually had a 4-man crew. T-94, maybe 5? Okay, let's just say 4. Let's just say 4. That's probably more realistic, because you're right. The more modern tanks are more automated. So I'll give you that. Usually the commander could probably run the radio. Usually the driver could probably work the coaxial, stuff like that, right? So even then, that's 120. And 1,300 in the APCs. And then the fighter jets, are they single seat or are they dual seat? So it could be 7 fighters or 7 pilots or 14. We don't know. Helicopters. There ain't one guy in a helicopter, especially if it's carrying troops like a Black Hawk, right? Let's just say 10 there. That's 60 there. 60 Spetsnaz troops, because they're the ones who get dropped in with helicopters, right? Your regular infantry don't come in with helicopters like that. Well,
Not the
maybe.
Russians.
Sorry. I'll be realistic. But let's just say Spetsnaz, because that's the thing you hear a lot of in the news right now. So let's just go with that. I'm going to take a quick pause. I'm going to look at the chat. I'm going to say good evening to Nate2099. Yes, it has been a long time since I've seen you. Gunmetal Guy USA. I see you all the time, but I'm glad to see you. And Streetport 13B, which, that's a Mazda guy, isn't it? You're a rotary guy. Good to see you.
It's Jared in disguise.
It's not Jared. Anyway, that was just a quick pause for, I guess you can call it station identification. Whatever. Anyway, like I said, you guys can type in the chat. We all see it. I will share it with the chat. People can see it. We will respond. Might be a little slow just because I'm on a bit of a bourbon-fueled rant. And I'm sorry that I'm talking a lot and I haven't given you guys a lot to say.
That's fine. I'll chime in with something witty to say every now and then.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm up to the 450 defense troops killed. So, do you have anything to add on to anything we've covered so far?
I mean, have we really got? Well, not really. No, I added the. We've already talked about the Sweden and Finland thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, other than that, no.
All right, we can keep going. We can keep going.
Yeah. Let's keep going.
All right. So here's where it gets kind of funny. We've been talking about cyber warfare, and one of the weirdest things for me is to hear these old people. Now, fuck it. I'm 42 years old. Okay, I'm part of the generation that created the internet. Most of the people that are listening to this chat right now are either my age, slightly older, or, let's be fair, there's a lot of guys that are younger than me by 10 to 15 years. My generation created the internet. I will concede that your generation below me made the internet faster or better. Okay? I can live with that. Somebody has to make something and somebody else has to make it better. Let's be fair. Let's be realistic, right? But when you hear people older than both of us, say Chuck Grassley or Dick Durbin, you know, people that are in their 60s and 70s, or even President Joseph R. Biden, talk about cyber attacks and cyber security. It sounds so stupid coming out of their mouths. It just sounds dumb. When they say the word cyber, it makes it sound stupid. I'm sorry. Why don't we just call it what it actually is? Electronic warfare. That actually sounds serious. When you hear a 70-something-year-old guy say cyber warfare, it's just like, shut up, old man. You don't even know what the hell you're saying. Let's
It's
be
true.
realistic. And that might be ageist, but it really does sound weird coming from somebody that wasn't even around to invent it. They were way past that, just administering other shit. Anyway, Russian officials have announced a partial restriction on Facebook access. Why partial, first of all? Because, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg is married to a Chi-Com? How about that for starters? Maybe that's why it's only partial. Maybe it's because Facebook actually data mines information that Russian hackers can pull for forward intel. Now there's a thought. It's not even outlandish if you think about it. Anyway, Russian officials have announced partial restriction on Facebook access. This shouldn't surprise you, especially given what the Chinese do with their internet. Google doesn't exist in China. Not really. They have Baidu. Baidu is state controlled, state run. They know everything that's going on in China. So a partial restriction of Facebook, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what they're doing in freaking mainland China. I should also remind you that Senator Mitch McConnell, also married to a Chi-Com. Somebody's got to say that because Russia's been dead for a year. I'll pick up that mantle. Fuck you,
Did you
Chi-Coms.
mention Nancy Pelosi's driver?
Or Eric Swalwell's hooker, Fang Fang. Fang Fang. Listen.
Do we see a theme here?
I'm going to be sexist here for just a split second, so if there are any ladies listening, I apologize. But the one thing a man hates is teeth. And you know what I'm talking about.
Oh.
And this dude had a chick named Fang Fang. What does that tell you? Anyway, sorry. I'm just being an idiot.
He likes getting pricked.
Sorry, I'm being an idiot, okay? I found that. I gotta break the tension a little bit. I know we're supposed to be serious, but Fang fucking Fang. Whatever. Should have had, like, Mia Khalifa or something. Sorry.
You probably should have went with that first.
Sorry. I'm stupid about that because she has really good looking hair. Anyway. Okay, so statistically in Poland, so Warsaw Patriot's going to love this part. Poland has opened its borders and has several dozen admission centers for Ukrainian refugees passing through the town of Lviv. I may have pronounced that wrong, but I think it's Lviv, L-V-I-V. Okay. They're admitting refugees, and the current figures as of today is 50,000 plus or minus a few. Ukrainian refugees have fled the country. First 2 days of fighting. Sorry, I got the hiccups. This was according to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. So this guy's job is to do head counts, essentially. The really sobering statistic to this, though, is he estimates that by the end of this conflict, which doesn't have a time frame yet, that there will be 5 million refugees fleeing the Ukraine. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The population of the Ukraine is what, about 30 million?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to correct the record yesterday. I had said something about the country being the size of Massachusetts crumpled into a ball. What I had meant was Moldova physically is about the size of that. Ukraine is actually about the size of Texas. Texas has a population of about 36 million. In Ukraine, you have about 30 to 32 million, and they're estimating 5 million refugees. That's a staggering statistic. That's 20% of the entire nation's population. That's irreplaceable. right? And that's not counting how many people stayed behind to fight. And the Poles are rejecting any male of fighting age, which I believe is 17 to 49. And they're still estimating 5 million people with that demographic group out of the picture. That's a staggering number. If Putin takes over that country and everyone left, there's nothing left for him to administer. He will have killed an entire generation of fighting men, and children and old people and women and invalids will have left. Mass exodus. Now, we had talked about the Chinese incurring on Taiwan and how they want to take over the country and administer it for its treasure, right? The I hate buzzwords, but they're talking about blood and treasure, and I really hate to say it, but there's no treasure in the Ukraine if you kill all the fighting men and expel all the people. What are you going to do? Just occupy it with Russians? Okay. And then you've got to rebuild everything you leveled? Fine. Then what are you going to do? Oh, it's Russia with a little extra space now. Do you think that the world will stand for that, first of all? No. It's not realistic. Anyway, let's move on. Earlier today, hundreds, maybe even 2,000-ish people had gathered outside of the White House today. Now, I don't know if you remember this, because there's a lot of people with short-term memories, but Washington, D.C. almost looks like a prison these days.
Yeah.
There are barricades. There are zones you are not allowed to assemble. There are fencing. Funny, the party in power who is against building a border wall has walled off the Capitol.
For their safety.
But just whatever details, Mike. It's all just details, right? Let's just don't look at that. Look over here, Dog and Pony Show, right? Look at Nancy Pelosi's ice cream. But hundreds of people had gathered outside the White House, which means they got past the barricades. They got to the wall, and they're all pro-Ukrainian protesters. And they're demanding tougher sanctions on Russia. Now, I'm a student of history. I'm a psychologist and I'm a sociologist. I also have a background in criminal pathology, so I know how madmen work. I am fascinated with how the human brain works and how people think. And I am going to tell you categorically till the day I die, sanctions are fucking useless when people are dying on the ground. Scott and I have been talking all day today, and Warsaw Patriot, you are more than welcome to join us throughout the day. I'm just leaving that open to you. I work all day. My thing is called Lobby for Working Stips. You're welcome to hang out there. But we had been talking all day about this, that sanctions are meaningless because sanctions do not affect the soldier on the ground firing the bullets that are killing Ukrainian people and soldiers. No sanction stops the soldier. The soldier is just there because he's stuck there and he's doing a job, he's getting paid to do it, and he swore an oath to follow his leader. He may not agree with it, and maybe he'll Bo Bergdahl his way out of it, but I suspect if there's Bo Bergdalski in Russia, he will be either dead or he will be wearing his wife's head as a hat as he goes to a Siberian salt mine. Just a thought. Sanctions mean nothing on the street level. Nothing. We had an idiot who said, let's just wait 30 days or so to see if these sanctions take effect and change Putin's outlook on the world.
And I said this yesterday. The Ukrainians don't have 30 days. They've got, maybe a week.
You know
or
what's
2
funny
at
though?
most.
If you've been watching the news today, every single thing that they have been saying today are things that we said yesterday on this program, on things that we have been saying on the Week in Review for months. I'm
I
not
know.
saying that they're listening in on my podcast. I'm not even saying that I'm ahead of the curve.
I
I'm
hate
just
to say it, I
saying
think
that
they're finally seeing the writing on the wall.
maybe they're just slow on the take because people like us who are normal thinkers had come up with simultaneous inventions saying, no, you and the media are just slow and stupid. Because what are they talking about today? Sanctions don't work. What are they talking about today? Joe Biden should have sanctioned Putin directly. What else are they talking about today? We should have expelled Russia from SWIFT. Everything we talked about yesterday and weeks prior, the media has finally started talking about.
Hate Lindsey
Well,
Graham if you want to, and that's fine. I don't care. I'm not a big proponent.
I don't
of him
hate him.
either.
That's the thing.
But the thing is, even yesterday, right after Biden's speech
Yeah.
about sanctions, Lindsey Graham came off saying that sanctions are not going to do a damn thing.
Right.
well, the perfect example to this is when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. They put in sanctions. It didn't work.
No.
And then
I'll do you one
Didn't
better
work.
than that. We have been sanctioning Iran for decades. They're still building nuclear
I was
weapons.
I, I was
I'll
leading
I'll
up to
give you
that.
one even better than that. Okay,
Hmm?
we've been sanctioning North Korea for decades, more than Iran, and it
Sure.
hasn't worked.
Right. And it's what it is it's proof positive. You may put sanctions that stymie the development of a country to be a first world power, sure. But if you've been a third world nation the entire time, what you didn't have, you're not missing. So what the hell was the point, right? We'd sanctioned North Korea. North Korea's never seen first world prosperity. They don't care. We've been sanctioning Iran, which is in the desert mainly. I'm not speaking ill of Iran or its people. I'm just talking about the geography. We've been sanctioning a country who has had to struggle in a very hot and inclement environment, right? Let's be fair, it's very deserty out there, right? They don't have acres and acres and acres of farmland. Let's be real. And if they never had it and we sanctioned it, it's like they're not missing it because they never had it in the first place. So they're just going to keep spinning centrifuges. Let's be real, right? And
Sanctions something they never had.
if you're watching this right now, or if you're part of this panel right now, my challenge to you is pay attention to the news for the next 3 days. Because I promise you, everything we have talked about and discussed here, you will hear being parroted by mainstream media. Because we are better and faster and smarter than them. They are nothing but parrots. They will repeat what we have said to you tonight. Because I have not seen otherwise. I have not turned on the news in the last 20 years and learned something. Not once. Instead, I've heard them repeat something that I had figured out before and go, huh, so I was right. Welcome to Team I Told You So. I'm not even trying to be arrogant. I'm just trying to point out the obvious.
Yeah.
So let's move on. NATO has agreed today to send what they call rapid response troops. This is the first time in NATO history that they will do this. What is it? They're not sending them into the Ukraine, right? Because Ukraine is not a UN or a NATO, or sorry, I keep saying UN. It's my mistake. NATO agrees to send in rapid response troops. but not to the Ukraine, because the Ukraine is not part of NATO. So where are they sending them? Now, I'm going to expand on this in a little bit, but just remember this point that I'm saying. They agreed to do it. It's the first time they've done it, and yet, where? Right? Now, I guess I'll go ahead and get to part of that. Yesterday, the
I'll
United
explain
States
it to you
committed
if you want me to.
7,000 troops. We're sending them to Germany. How far is Germany from the Ukraine?
A
Couple
little-
thousand miles.
A couple thousand miles, yeah.
Okay. So, I tried to reason this out because I'm an analytical guy. And I tried to think sociologically. And I thought, why did we move 7,000 chess pieces on the board to Germany? And the only answer I can come up with is Germany must have agreed to move pieces off of their part of the map to somewhere else, but they wouldn't do it until they had a commitment that somebody would backfill their space to protect their rear. Sounds reasonable, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday we announced 7,000 troops are moving into Germany. Germany today announces that they're moving troops into Slovakia.
Well, hold
Now
on
that's
here.
a bit closer to the Ukraine.
They share a border with the Ukraine. Their eastern border, the eastern border of Slovakia, borders Ukraine. So that's the reason why. So,
So
they can
that
push
makes
those troops
sense.
towards Ukraine, or literally they could put them on the Slovakian border.
Okay.
And
So that does make
eh,
sense.
Oh, I've got a better one.
Go on.
We've got an entire helicopter battalion and at least 6 F-35s and an unknown number of F-15s. And guess what country?
Go on.
Poland,
Fine.
Poland
Fine.
also shares a border.
Fine.
which shares a border with
Yeah, a
Ukraine.
couple hour flight from Lviv. I'll give you that. Okay. We're going to talk about actually we're going to talk about helicopters and shit here very closely cuz I'm trying to do all these bullet points that I recorded today chronologically by the hours they were announced. So as of right now,
And
we're only at 12:30 Central Standard Time.
Right.
Okay? This is how much stuff I've got. We're only at 12:30. We're only at 8:30 Ukrainian local time. So buckle up because we're only an hour in and we're not even
But
halfway through.
that's the reason I said about Slovakia. And you wondered about that. I guess you didn't know your geometry is a little off.
No, my geography. But
Geography.
what I was
Geography.
saying is Germany. The thing is right now the United States is not trying to take the lead on this because we've never taken the lead on anything. We always wait until it's a crisis and then we come in and clean it up for everybody else.
We don't want to be seen as a warmonger. That's
No,
why.
no, you see, that's wrong. The thing is, World War One, we had let a war fester from 1914 to 1917, right? Tens of millions of people died. We had been playing Lord of War for 3 years, arming all sides. We were selling Maxim machine guns to everybody. We were making Remington Mosin Nagants. We were making Enfields. We were making Lebel rifles. We were the manufacturer of the world for war because we're capitalists and we were opportunists for 3 years. Tens of millions of people died. And they finally threw up their hands and said, "Stop fleecing us of money and help us stop this." And once the Lusitania was attacked and struck,
That gave
it
us a
finally gave the United States an excuse to pressure Woodrow Wilson to stop being such an isolationist, cowardly prick and put his fucking boots to ass. And that's when
because
we
enough
finally got
human li-
involved.
Enough American lives died.
But here's the
to
problem.
do something about
We
it.
got involved late. More Americans had to die to clean up the mess of occupation and stalemate because we let them create a stalemate for years. They were seasoned, dug in, and established for years until we finally sent our guys in. More people died breaking the stalemate than if we just could have shock and awed them in the beginning. Anyway, we didn't do that. We did not do that.
Here's the thing too. I hate to come in late, but as far as the whole thing where we hopped in, I was so out of the loop about Moldova, dude. I'm 100% honest with you, dude, because I knew Belarus was involved with Russia, but not Moldova. I didn't know Moldova was actually a Russian ally.
Oh yeah, dude. I put that in there day
loop.
one. Yeah, I mentioned that yesterday. Day one, 9,000 troops were stationed in Moldova. And then they pushed in 222 on 222-22. Like, I even made that stupid joke about, wow, even dictators play odometer games. Like, it's to break the tension. I know it's a serious thing, but it was kind of funny that the time and date and everything, whatever. Symbolism, right? But yeah, that happened. But so you see, what my point is we waited until the last second. We made as much money as we can off the suffering of battling countries. And then when we finally decided that we were going to come in and help clean up, so many more of our guys had to die fixing a stalemate between seasoned, hardened, dug-in enemy. When we could have went in day one before they became experienced and maybe took advantage of their inexperience, right? That happened in World War I, and it absolutely happened again in World War II, and then we stopped doing world wars. That was the last war we won. Let's be real. That's the last actual declared war we won through absolute, well, they don't call it that, total warfare, I think is what they call it, right? That's the last time. Everything else has been considered a police action. That annoys the absolute fuck out of anyone who served after World War II. You call it a police action, that is an insult to those who served. Because those guys bled and died. That was a war to them.
Here's the thing, too. Regardless of the Second World War, we had to get involved because of the atrocities that Germans, and as well as any other nation, would do to stop them from committing these atrocities of evil.
But you see, we didn't get involved until the fight came to us. And the fight came to us because we shut the spigot off to Imperial Japan. Imperial Japan ran their whole war off of our oil. We cut the spigot off. They attacked us. Then we became involved, intimately involved. And that gave us an excuse to be like, well, we have to deal with this bullshit in the West. I guess we'll have to be involved in the bullshit in the East, too. I mean, we didn't want to be involved in any of it until it hit our doorstep. Then we had to. Like, the American industrial complex would no longer stand for it. They were like, this is bullshit. People are dying. I have family over there. Let's build something and help them. I mean, not Woodrow Wilson, sorry. Winston Churchill called and groveled and begged to FDR. And FDR was like, I'm sorry, but I just can't help you. Maybe I can just bring my planes over there and push them off the side of the boat and you can take them from where we leave them. Like, if you were Winston Churchill, you would be livid. Like, are you fucking serious, dude? We're dying here. We're holding back the darkness that will eventually island hop across Iceland and Greenland and hit New York City. And you're telling us you can't help us? Like, this is history repeating itself. I'm sorry. Because right now, Ukrainians are begging us to help them. And it's like... Go ahead.
The only thing about Putin, yes, he has a nuke, but honestly, I think he's just swinging his dick around to see who he can screw around with. That's all he's doing.
I would agree with you, but he's 70 years old, and I think he's at this point in his life right now where he's legacy building. See, he's been in power for 22 years.
3 terms to be exact.
He has seen the destruction of the Soviet Union that he was a puppet in. He was the head of the Stasi in East Germany. He had to retreat East Germany and go across combat countries back to the safety of Mother Russia. And then once he finally became influential enough to become empowered, then he was like, let's make Russia great again in the communist way, right? There's a difference between let's make Russia great again and let's make America great again. America wanted to be great because it wanted to be independent for energy manufacturing and not have to bend the knee to cheap labor. That's different. That's patriotism. Make Russia great again in the eyes of Vladimir Putin is let me slam the Iron Curtain back down all the way to Poland. Because that's all he ever knew. You can say that he is a poisoned product of his upbringing. Maybe he's a tragic actor in this whole thing. But the fact of the matter is he's still the actor. He could have reformed, but he doesn't want to. All he ever knew was taken from him, and now he wants it back.
Now, who does that sound like to you?
Somebody who lost everything and wants it back?
What similarity to modern day to back to the Cold War of the Soviet Union? Who, out of all the bad people, who do you think would have been the worst?
That lost things and wanted it back.
Stalin.
I'm not so sure.
No, he never lost anything.
He
lost his family.
He killed 20 million
care
of his
about
own
family.
He didn't
people.
care about his family. That's why his son died in prison.
Yeah, he killed 20 million
His
of his
son died
own.
under the Nazis.
I have more links to literally Hitler because he wanted to bring back the great, German Reich.
The German Empire.
No, but the point is Stalin and Putin.
Yeah.
If he had to compare the worst out of both of them, they're pretty much almost as equally as bad.
Well, yeah, he's playing Stalin's playbook right now. See, the thing is, though, actually, you know what? No, he's not. He's playing Adolf Hitler's playbook right now for what had happened to Stalin. See, Hitler and Stalin had the non-aggression pact, right? He didn't want Germany to come across the Urals, and he wanted to give concessions and assurances to Germany that we won't come across the Urals as long as you share your military technology with us because we need to catch up. So Hitler saw that as an opportunity, and he was like, okay, well, this is what we're doing with tanks, this is what we're doing with boats, and this is what we're doing with planes. But you go on and you be my stoolie and my stooge and join the Axis for a while, right? And I won't attack you. And for some reason, Parkinson started to really rot his brain, and Himmler started to really rot his brain, and who's the other guy? The propaganda minister that I keep forgetting the name of. Anyway, he kept poisoning Hitler's mind because he was taking advantage of a guy who was losing his marbles. And they were like, you can't trust them Russians, we gotta go attack them too before they attack us. And that was the beginning of the end. I mean, think of it this way, and I swear I didn't want to get into this part of this, but if Adolf Hitler just stuck to his guns and pushed west, and kept his non-aggression pact with the East, everybody all the way to Greenland would be speaking German right now. Let's not kid ourselves. At least to Greenland. Let's not kid ourselves.
How about the Manheim Castle? Could have lost that Second World War. Maybe.
That's really, really a stretch. Because that would require the Japanese to be successful too. That was I saw it, and I thought it was a fascinating story, what if, but that would have required so many pieces to fall the right way. And that would also have required the United States not to have Oppenheimer, to be totally honest. I mean, think about it. Oppenheimer created the bomb, but the Germans created the delivery system with the V2. But anyway, I don't want to get into a Nazi debate because that's obviously not what we're
all
talking
those
about.
scientists were Jewish and left the country because they didn't want to get, sent to, a concentration camp.
So anyway,
Einstein, who was Jewish.
Let's see.
Oh,
I want to talk about a Ukrainian hero today.
Okay.
What you may not notice, because you guys are in the panel, you're probably not watching from the YouTube side, but the picture I chose from the YouTube side shows a destroyed bridge leading into a town. And I will be honest, the photo I used was from Metro Last Light because the story of Metro Last Light sort of fits into this whole theme. There is a man that the Ukrainian military released a statement on today. This man is 27 years old, and even I could never strive to be as great as this guy was, and he was only 27. So this is me being an older guy conceding that a younger guy did something amazing, and he died doing it. So, Ukrainian military has released a statement thanking a Marine by the name of Vitaly. I'm going to try to struggle through this. Vitaly Volodymyrovich Skakun. Let me try that again. Volodymyrovich Skakun.
Is it Vitaly Mizanovich?
Vitaly Volodymyrovich Skakun. He's a battalion engineer, and essentially what this guy did was this isn't to discount the action, it's just this was the thing I thought of when I read about it. He reenacted the scene in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly where he went chest deep in water and wired a bridge to blow it up to prevent Russian armored divisions from crossing over and begin their assault on Kiev. You know the scene I'm talking about. Yep. This was where Clint Eastwood and... oh shit, I can't remember the guy's name now. Let me just use the character names. Tuco and Angel Eyes went across the river and they wired the bridge and they blew it. Right? This guy did the same thing. He went across a bridge with his unit. He started wiring it. He heard the Russians coming. He told everyone to get off the bridge. And he detonated it while he was still on it. And died. He blew the bridge and sacrificed himself to do it. So, they're going to issue him the Order of the Hero of the Ukraine, which is their equivalent of the Order of the Hero of the Soviet Union, which is our equivalent of the Medal of Valor. Very high honor. 27-year-old guy. He's dead now. His war is over. The dead don't care, but he cared enough to die to stop what he thought would stop the war. It didn't. In the grand scheme of things, in hindsight, it didn't. But the dead don't get the luxury of hindsight. But the guy needs to be honored and commended for that, because gotta tell you, when you're a teenager or when you're in your 20s, you are easily manipulated and influenced by the military. I know, because I tried to get into it 4 times. They take young and impressionable and stupid people, and they'll get you to do what they want you to do. Well, this guy did that, but he was also a patriot, and he died for it, and he should be honored for it, and they did. That's decent of them. This happened today. Moving on. So, we flew our troops, 7,000. We committed them yesterday. They're going to fly... Now, here's an interesting statistic. Most of the time when troops get flown to foreign combat zones, you always hear about them coming out of Fort Hood, Texas, because we have an armored division, we do helicopter training, and we do infantry. It's a great big staging area, and you almost always hear about troops coming out of Fort Hood, Texas. Not this time. For once, the 7,000 troops that flew to Germany came out of Fort Stewart in Georgia. Just a statistic. I'm not trying to make a point or anything. It's just they came out of Georgia this time. 12:32 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8:32 p.m. local Ukrainian time. A phone call was intercepted between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. If you ever needed proof that these two fuckers aren't working together, like if the picture of them basically sucking face with one another at the Olympics wasn't good enough, phone call was intercepted, 8:32 p.m. Central Standard Time. What was that call about? Xi Jinping threw in all his chips and said he supported the Russians' advance into the Ukraine. Really? That's what the call was about. I support you. It was just basically a reminder. Hey, we got this deal, right? You're still going west and I'm still going east. So on the record, I support you. Wink, wink. That's what that was. That happened today, 8:32 p.m. local time, Ukraine.
Now, here's a question: how is India to be taken as far as China is going to be concerned?
India right now, and I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday.
They're scared.
A media guy from the Indian National News asked Biden, has the United States contacted India about its commitments to the Ukraine and Chinese conflict? Biden's answer speaks volumes. I have not discussed that, and I'm not ready to discuss that at this time. What that tells me is India hasn't said a word. And the reason that they haven't said a word is because they're scared shitless for all the right reasons. I'm not picking on them. They're scared for the right reasons. They are what you call a what do you call this? They're what you would call an upstart nation into the modern world. And what I mean by that is their economy is booming. They're really starting to come into their own. Their military is starting to come into their own. They have just created their first indigenously designed aircraft carrier, which is quite impressive because if you look at the way it was designed, it's a global Navy greatest hits. It has, I want to say it's like a Russian style launching platform, but it has a European style tracking and radar system with a United States propulsion system. So what they did was is they studied all the different navies and they said we want this piece from this one, this piece from this one, and this piece from this one. And they purchased the licensing rights to manufacture certain things. And we sent them the licensing rights to the propulsion systems of a Gerald R. Ford class freaking aircraft carrier. That's what they're building. So right now they're in development. That's what it was. The word was a developing nation. They are a rapidly developing nation. They are very quickly becoming a first world influential power, right? They have a very small population of very rich people, and they have a huge population of very poor people. And they're becoming recognized on a global stage, militarily, economically, and because of the way that China keeps pissing off the world about labor, they're actually picking up a lot of the labor market. Fun fact, the biggest export out of India, which is also the biggest import to the United States from India, physicians, doctors. Biggest. The most doctors coming to the United States come from India, numerically speaking. So they're a very rapidly developing country. They can't stop what they're doing right now to fight a war. They don't want to, and they can't, because they have China to the east and northeast, and theoretically, they have them to the west too, because we talked about this yesterday. China has blue water ports in eastern Africa, which means they have a foothold there. Yes, they don't have the quietest submarines, but they have submarines, and they are operating, which means they're in the Indian Ocean, which means they're constantly monitoring the Indian Navy, which isn't fully developed yet. They're still building. They don't want to stick their neck out there when they've only got 2 battleships or 2 aircraft carriers, when they're trying to build a 500 ship Navy. You see what I'm saying? They don't want to try to play this game when they've only got 2 pieces to move on the board. So as far as I'm aware, they're not speaking very loudly right now. They're just trying to keep their head down like, don't notice us because we're still building our army. Maybe they'll come into play soon, but not right now, at least from what it looks like. PNW Woods is out there. He is in the Pacific Northwest, and he was mentioning that Putin wants to run a pipeline to the Black Sea, and the oligarchs are behind all of this. And that would be correct because they're the ones funding it. They want to build more than what you would see as the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 1 is online, Nord Stream 2 is built but not online. And the media would try to let you think that we're shutting down Nord Stream 2. It's not online. But yes, they do want to run extra pipelines through the Black Sea because they want to become an energy exporter not only to Europe, but they also want to hit the Baltic states, and they maybe want to hit the Middle East on the way down to like Northern Africa. Maybe. It's hard to say. Like, we'll see how that plays out. And he was saying that literally the most engineers are also coming out of India as well, which is true, actually. The funny thing is, though, and what he just said is warm water port. And the funny thing is if you look at the Black Sea and you look at all the nations in the Black Sea, Russia has a coastline with the Black Sea. They don't have to have the Ukraine. They don't have to have Crimea. They do have coastline with the Black Sea. They just want the other guys. That's the difference. They're not happy with what they got. They want more. And what's really funny is even if they get into the Black Sea, they're still not in the Med. And even if they were in the Med, they're still not in the Atlantic. See, they've got the Northern Fleet in the Arctic. They've got the Western Fleet in Vladivostok. They still technically don't have a rapid foray into the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean. Yet. That's the key word, yet. They're trying for it.
That's why they're trying to retake, Ukraine and make it part of Russia again.
But the thing is they Ukrainian's border gives them what? The Med and the Black Sea, right?
Belarus capitulate and join us, and the same thing to Moldova.
Well, they've already got Belarus and Moldova.
Well, right now Belarus is more of a puppet state.
So is Moldova. You let a foreign military's troop occupy your country.
No, this is a question that bothers me. Is Serbia an ally of Russia?
That's a...
Or is that a NATO country? Because last time I checked, Serbia doesn't still like us after Yugoslavia.
You see, I got a friend who's Serbian and I got a friend who's Bosnian. Those two hate each other, but I'm friends with both. And I never get a straight answer out of either one of them, to be honest.
Because I know some Serbs were actually helping out the Russians during the Ukraine conflict, so that's why I'm asking.
Well,
I don't have the answer to that
I've
yet.
got a few friends that are Serbian too, and they like him. And, at least his family likes Americans. So,
The two guys I know, one's Bosnian, one's Serbian. When the refugee program hit the United States, the Bosnians were sent to Houston, Texas. The Serbians were sent to Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And yet, they still moved down here to Houston, Texas. What's that? What's that about? Either way, I don't have the answer to that yet. I will try to find the answer to that by tomorrow. Because I'm pretty sure we're going to do this again tomorrow.
Oh, no.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
No, we're talking about Serbia.
I made a commitment to give you the war room every day until this conflict is over. And I gotta tell you, it's a lot to do. I can't do it by myself, so everything that you guys come up with that you put into the Discord channel, I put that into the show. So, you're helping me help you and help them. Let's continue, though, because we still have more bullet points to get through.
Goody.
Oh, yeah. So we were talking about helicopters earlier. 12:47 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8:47 p.m. local Ukrainian time. The reason I'm doing it this way, I'm trying to give you a timeline of how much information had flowed in today. This is only the second day of a global conflict, okay? This is a global conflict. You can stick your head in the sand and say it isn't, but at the end of the day, it's a global conflict. Because we're in a global economy with global energy trade, this will become a global conflict. It will hit your doorstep in some form soon. Whether it's your wallet, your job, your communications, whatever. Face the reality of it. It's coming. So let's just go ahead and be aware. 150 plus attack and transport helicopters with troops have begun amassing on the Belarusian southern border today.
Shocker.
Was caught on satellite imaging. Now remember, yesterday over 20,000 troops and armored units had crossed from the Belarusian border into the northern part of Ukraine. All these numbers here are new on top of what's already been pushing across. Attack and transport helicopters, plus the troops, plus the support staff to maintain all of it. That happened at 8:47 p.m. local Ukrainian time. This was at roughly the same time that the armored divisions that had pushed in a day earlier began bombarding the northern coast of, or the northern outskirts of the capital city of Kiev. Coincidence? No, clearly. Afterwards, 2 minutes after that news broke, so this is just bang, 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 bang. 2 minutes after that news broke, Boris Johnson in the UK levied sanctions directly naming Vladimir Putin and Defense Minister Sergei Lavrov, the two biggest people in Russia, had sanctions placed directly on them. That was a question that was asked yesterday at Biden's press conference. Biden had no answer. Today, the UK did it. 3 hours later, the White House announces that it will push for the same sanctions directly naming Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov. That happened at 3:15 p.m. Central Standard Time. That would be 9:15 p.m. Ukraine time.
Now here's a question. What about Canada and Australia? Did they do the same thing or no?
Not yet. Canada did something different. What they ended up doing is they committed shipments of weapons, munitions, and ammunition to the Ukraine. So they did something in their capacity. That was, I think, yesterday. So it's good. Like, it's something. Like, they all can't do the same thing. When they levy NATO sanctions, they all had to agree to it. So technically, yes, they were part of it. But in terms of being a vocal frontman, Canada did the equipment and hardware part of it. Fine, that's cool, right? Basically, they took all the guns away from the Canadian people and gave it to the Ukrainian people, while they were breaking out windows and dragging truckers out and impounding their trucks and killing their dogs because of some metrosexual asshole. Oh, did I say
bitch.
Did I say
He's
the
a
quiet
bitch.
part out loud? The dude's a bitch. Someone needs to grab him by his hair and shave it. Anyway.
Castro's son.
Anyway. My opinions of metrosexual freaking whatever the fuck his name is. Trudeau. Mix two letters, he's a turd. I'm telling you, what happened in Canada should be a global message to show you the importance of the Second Amendment defending your First Amendment rights. Because they don't have either one. And they also don't have a truckers union anymore, technically. Because they're all in jail and all their dogs got killed. Almost like ATFs.
It's funny you mentioned about the Second Amendment. A lot of nations around the world have been trying to adopt it. Poland, Czech Republic, who else? Brazil.
Ukraine,
yes. Israel, I know, is not really to its full extent, but it's got something.
We had a guy, his name was Amit. He was a tank commander for the IDF. And he's not technically retired. They keep calling him back, you know? He was explaining to us how it works. You're allowed to have one firearm. You can have it. You gotta pay your fees or whatever. He had one. And then if he wanted another one, he had to sell the one he had in exchange towards the other one. I had a really hard time wrapping my head around this. Now, admittedly, I got into this firearms game late in life, 27, 8, something like that. Like, they were around me, it's just I wasn't an owner-operator, I guess is a good way to put it, right? So when he told me this, and I'm sitting in a room of, like, 75 guns. I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. It's like you're speaking a foreign language to me. What do you mean you trade one gun for another? Who the hell does that? It's not like a car. Even if it was a car, I have 3, Anyway, I don't get that. But yeah, you're right. Their firearms rights are odd, I guess. But a lot of nations are adopting liberty and the right to defend yourself. Just not Canada. Just not Canada.
Just not Canada.
It's illegal it's illegal to defend yourself in Canada.
It's because they got flippy top heads and they fart all the time. I've seen Terrence and Phillip. I've seen that shit. That's a documentary, right?
No, that's from South Park.
It's a joke.
I know.
Anyway. Okay, so we touched on that. We already talked about Germany sending their battle group to Slovakia. What they're going to do there, I don't know. Maybe they're going to brew beer and cook sausages. Who the fuck knows?
Wait, they moved their troops to Slovakia?
We moved our troops into Germany so Germany can move their troops into Slovakia. It's basically a shell game. Right, but it's a shell game. They didn't want to commit UN forces into another country until they could backfill their flank, I guess is a good way to put it.
I gotta speak as far as Germany.
Sure.
Their leader's a bitch.
The new one or the old one?
Because the old one, Angela Merkel.
Well, yeah, she's gone though.
She's gone. She's not in charge anymore.
Yeah, she's gone.
Who's running the country now?
Some other asshole.
Some of an asshole of a different feather, but pretty much the same problem.
Yeah.
Germany is literally a bitch at this point. They don't give us 2 shits if their country is overrun again.
No. Brilliant engineers, useless leaders. Let's just put it that way. Which is why they're in Slovakia, not in the Ukraine.
They haven't had a leader that could do anything for many, many years, and let's leave it at that.
They're not allowed to.
No, they're not.
First time they show any level of assertiveness, they're like, "Oh my God, you're turning into Hitler."
If Germany's this bad, I wonder how Austria is handling their leadership.
Austria they're like India right now. They're just keeping their head down like, "Oh, mein Gott, don't notice me." Anyway, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be making jokes.
Honestly, we need the jokes right now. It's pretty bleak.
All right, so I'm about to make it really bleak.
Well,
12:58 p.m. I'm doing this on a timeline, right? 12:58 p.m. Central Standard Time. This would have been 2 minutes before 9 p.m. So it's dark in the city of Kiev, light-wise, right? They have a curfew. It's locked down. They probably limited the number of city lights that were turned on because they didn't want to light up the city, so it made it easier for the Russians to target with artillery. It's realistic, right? So 2 minutes to 9 o'clock, Mayor Klitschko, remember, former heavyweight champion of the world, also had a photo op with a fucking RPD with a belt around his arm, like fucking super Ukrainian Rambo badass. No, I'm not gay for Klitschko. Anyway, he reported that he had gotten a report that 5 large heavy blasts were heard near the Kiev thermal power plant 2 minutes before 9 p.m. This was as the armored divisions of the Russian contingent that came out of Belarus had just reached the outskirts of the city proper. Okay, so they had Putin do a press conference throughout the day appealing to the Ukrainian military to stand down and defy the orders of their superiors and join the Russian military to denazify the country. Okay, so they had this propaganda message going that was delivered by Putin, and then once that didn't work, and once the Snake Island 13 told the Navy to go fuck itself, Putin realized they're not giving in. So then they turned around and they were like, well, we're going to have to hit infrastructure. We're going to have to knock out their internet. We're going to have to cut off their power. We're going to have to ruin their utilities. 5 blasts near the Kiev power plant, 2 minutes to 9 o'clock today, Ukraine time. I don't think they knocked out the power because, like, Trey Yingst is on the ground from Fox. He's like their foreign correspondent. This dude puts this dude puts it out there, man. Like, this guy's got a death wish. He'll sit there in the middle of the city with no fucking helmet on. I'm just like, wow. You're just like one flying piece of shrapnel away from becoming a stain in a memory. But good on you for giving us the news, right?
You
So
know
he-
what this resembles?
Hmm.
I hate to cut you off. Pardon me.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this resembles exactly like the Warsaw Uprising, since this is hard, dire times now for the Ukrainian people.
It is. It is. So, like, Russia decided, okay, well, we can't win their hearts and minds, so we'll cut off their power and just freeze them to death, right? So, I don't think that succeeded because the lights are still on. Like, I could flip over to Fox News right now, and Trey Yingster will be standing there, and the lights will be on. But they tried. Good on you for trying. So that happened. That happened 2 minutes to 9 o'clock. Then, let's see, that would have been, 2 minutes later, literally 2 minutes later. So that would have been 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Ukrainian time. Right? No, 9 p.m. Ukrainian time. Sorry, I got that wrong. 9 p.m. Ukrainian time. Sleepy, creepy, dopey Uncle Joe decides that he's going to hold a press conference. Now, remember, he did one yesterday. He was supposed to speak on the Ukrainian conflict at like 10 a.m. By the time he rolled out of his bed, snorted cocaine off a hooker's ass, took his 50 million supplements and pills to get him to actually sound coherent, it was like fucking 1:30 before he actually spoke. Hours
Is that
after he
before
was...
or after he
There
got
were
pregnant?
3 2-minute warnings to the press that the president was about to come out. Because he couldn't fucking get his shit together. Right? That was yesterday. Today? Fucking 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On the fucking dot. He walked out and he was on the podium. No delay. Great. You're prompt and you're here. What are you about to tell us? This is my affirmative action choice for SCOTUS. The press conference, the press corps were silent. It was like he was speaking to an audience of Sphinx. They were all just like, the fuck? Like, you could see the look on their faces. They were like, wait a minute. Good on you for showing up on time. People are dying halfway across the world. You're going to tell us who you chose for the Supreme Court? The fuck? So he introduces his Supreme Court choice. And then the news, being cattle, played along. And they said, well, let's talk about this person that he's chosen. And then they started asking, do they have bipartisan support? Do they have this? Do they have that? It was like some weak-ass attempt to deflect your attention away from what's actually important. I think the story lasted like 7 minutes. She came up there. She spoke. She talked about her family. She talked about her dad being a cop. She talked about all this other shit, right? I will admit, she sounded good. She sounded level-headed and good. She's also an AOC appointee. She's also the most radical of the 4 that she had to choose from. I have a problem with affirmative action. I do. When I was younger and they mentioned it, I thought, okay. As I got older and sensible and actually developed a brain and an educated opinion, I thought, this is fucking bullshit. Because what we have done in this country is we have appeased the lowest common denominator. The idiot. The cattle that vote based on color or based on race or is based on something irrelevant. We are not choosing the most qualified person to run a job anymore because we have to put in a female, or we have to put in a black, or we have to put in an Indian, or we have to put in a lesbian black female. Wow, we got all the bases covered right there. Bam, done, right? Like, why? What happened to just being qualified? And that sort of, we're going to touch on this tomorrow in the week in review, because I know it's not appropriate for this show.
Not qualified anymore. It's all about numbers.
I want to talk about how we're going to change the way that we vote for people in this country, because the fact of the matter is this country would be better served if everyone was blind. Because if you didn't know what color that person was and you can only hear their voice, then you couldn't make stupid choices based on pigeonholing. Oh, no, I have to vote for her because she's a black woman. Okay, well, what if that black woman had 50 felonies and 2 murders under her belt, and the other person was an Asian man who has a spotless record? You gonna vote for the black woman just because the president promised to put a black woman in there? Yes,
Yeah, I'd vote for the
because
Asian
that's what
guy.
we do in this country. Affirmative action. Get that shit out of here.
Then
That's
again,
what he did today at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He showed up to that press conference on the dot, on time, to do that. When the press wanted to ask him, why did you not sanction Putin directly? Why is he still allowed to be in SWIFT banking? That's what they wanted to know. Instead, he said, this is my affirmative action choice. She's going to tell you about her upbringing so you can go, oh, what a sweet old lady, or what a sweet lady. We should definitely push her through. Can you do that later when the world's not at war? I'm sure she's a nice lady. She sounded wonderful. I don't care if she's a Democratic appointee. Whatever. She sounded wonderful. Fine. Can we do this later when people aren't dying? That'd be good, right? The Titanic is sinking. Hey, this is a new band that just won American Idol. The fuck? Anyway.
I like to add something.
Yeah. Anyway.
You think our president's really competent? Guys, this
No.
guy has had 2 brain surgeries. He had 2 brain tumors removed from his head. He's got Alzheimer's. He shits his pants everywhere he goes. The guy literally doesn't even understand a freaking full sentence.
See,
Nice strike.
What
Yeah.
needs to happen
Nice
is
strike. The sound.
Which one do you want me to say?
Oh, no. You know.
Oh, do
Come
you
on.
have that
Okay.
soundboard available right now?
Yes. You know, we've got a president that says things like this.
All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
The
And
thing.
this.
The thing.
Honestly, if you guys think this guy's fucking competent, he's understanding.
I don't know how to spell that.
I don't either.
So honestly, guys, if you think this guy's competent, you're so misled, or you're fucking completely stupid.
There's 2 examples right there of how incompetent he is.
This guy can clearly hear you, and he wouldn't even fucking remember it in the next 2 seconds.
And here's the proof.
So, Brandon, I agree.
Oh,
Thursday.
Yep.
okay.
So, there we
We, America had an opportunity to stop this before it started, and I'll tell you the exact moment it could have stopped. Do you remember when he came to do that United Auto Workers tour?
Oh my
go. And
god.
that
he-
dude called him out.
And
He called him
that
full
dude
of shit.
called him out, and then Biden got in his face all fake
Oh, we're
macho.
gonna take your AR-14s away.
No.
Yeah.
This was a United Auto Workers guy who was like half his age and twice his size, and he got in his face and he's like, "I'll take you outside and whoop your ass."
Holy shit.
And this dude sat there knowing that he couldn't say anything because Biden was flanked by Secret Service. That guy should have looked him right in the eye and said, I am not against taking an old man out and whooping his ass. Get out of my fucking face.
I need to copy that video. I want to watch that.
Actually, he should have gone, I'll be outside after the press conference.
No, he'd be like, why don't you shed your Secret Service, bitch, and I'll just fucking lay you out right here. I ain't gonna take some shit from some old man who smells like mothballs and Bengay. Fuck that. Right? Like, the dude got made to look like a bitch on national TV. And he shouldn't have. He should have stood up for himself. But he was probably afraid he was gonna lose his fucking union job. Anyway, that was the moment we could have nipped this in the bud. That dude should have fucking threw a flying elbow and broke that old man's jaw and left him in traction for the rest of his fucking life sucking on applesauce or a goddamn straw. But no, we couldn't do that. Anyway, I'm just being angry because I've had a lot of bourbon.
Hey, and Biden is never my president. I'm sorry, but
He's
he
no
is
one's
not
president.
fit as a president.
All right, so we got to get through this, man.
Go ahead.
All right. After the SCOTUS pick thing, there was a lull in the updates. Probably about 35 minutes. I know that you must have thought I was going to say hours. About 35 minutes. And in that 35 minutes, a couple of stories had broken without timestamps. And I want you to try to imagine what I'm about to tell you and what it sounds like from history, because I'm a student of history, and I'm sure you are too, Patriot, so you're going to know this. Russian forces have mobilized mobile crematoriums that can, quote, evaporate soldiers killed in the attacks. Now, they're vans that can cremate bodies. Okay? What does that sound like to you?
It sounds like Germans of the
Gas
Gas
vans.
chamber.
1930s
Gas
and
chambers.
40s
Gas
variety.
vans.
Gas chamber.
They would throw people in the back of these vans where the tailpipe fed into the back of the van. By the time they
Correct.
got to where they were going, everyone had died from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the bigger question. Who are they cremating? Is it their own Russian soldiers so the families of those who died don't get their sons and daughters back in Russia? Or are they
Probably
just
not.
cremating Ukrainian bodies so there's no body count? So
That's right.
the rest of the world can't see how much of an atrocity this is.
Or it could be an ethnic cleansing.
Exactly. Like
I'm gonna go with option B.
I didn't see this series until last year, and it was, I think, from the late 80s to the early 90s. It was called The World at War. And then there was another one that followed it, and it was about, Nazi Germany's incursion and all that. And it followed this one, he was like a Jewish, Polish writer of some sort. And he kept trying to, like, his daughter or his granddaughter kept trying to evacuate him. And she kept trying to get him out, but he kept trying to hold her back. And eventually they got captured by the Nazis. And then she got, like, tortured and raped, but she still got away. And he got put into a concentration camp and gassed. And right before he died, he's sitting there screaming. He's like, "The world is lost. The world is lost." And then he chokes to death. And then the next scene is this giant, like, dump truck full of ash getting dumped into the river. And it was like, this whole thing with mobile crematoriums just smacks of that. They're just going to burn the evidence so the numbers can't come in. And they're just going to be like, "Where's Yorgi?" in Ukrainian. And they're going to be like, "I don't know." And then the Russians are going to be like, "That guy's name was Yorgi. Now he's in the river." You know?
Speaking of crematorium, I remember 2 years
Ooh, I got
back
one.
when the COVID-19 was going around.
Sure.
You know what the Chinese were doing?
Hmm.
Satellite imagery was actually checking over China, and sure enough, there were big ass fires everywhere. What are the chances that actually they were burning bodies
Of course
of live
they were.
people or
Oh, you're talking
people
about the
that were dead?
heat bloom signatures that they picked up on
Yeah,
radar.
yeah.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. See, here's the thing. Why does the world not have the compunction to call out and see what everyone already knows? A country had released a manufactured biological weapon on the world that ruined a United States election and destroyed an entire global economy. And then they're trying to push into Taiwan. Why have we not called that out? And the answer is pretty simple. And it's really shitty. Because they are also the manufacturer of cheap labor in the world, and nobody wants to piss off their cheap labor. That's pathetic. It's really
It is.
pathetic.
The
We
Chinese
have,
doctors called it out, and he got censored for it.
yeah, well, we have a society that doesn't want to pay certain wages to its own population to manufacture things to make them independent in the name of cheap labor, where a country has squalid conditions and it has very few rich and powerful people ruling over a massive working class under communist rule.
You work 80 hours a week.
You may work to death as far as we know. But
They
the
have to
fact of the
put
matter
metal
is
inside
they
your building.
manufactured a biological weapon and released it on the world. That is undeniable. We know where it came from. We also know it's not natural.
It was weaponized.
It was weaponized. And the really sad reality is the only reason no one's called them out and bombed and sanctioned them into the Stone Age is because the United States helped them make it. Do you notice who you don't hear on TV anymore?
Dr.
In the last,
Fauci.
yeah, because he made it. He helped them. He's a co-conspirator. And if he spoke up and said, okay, yeah, maybe I helped him develop a biological weapon, then we're co-conspirators. Then we're just as guilty as they are. That's why there's no stink. Not only does the fact that the world doesn't want to lose its free, cheap labor, but the United States doesn't want to lose its stellar, clear crystal image that it doesn't do such evil things. But Fauci has been very quietly put away because he's been discredited or tarnished enough to where nobody wants to talk about it anymore. This Ukrainian conflict, did you notice something? This Ukrainian conflict, all of a sudden, COVID doesn't matter anymore, does it?
Nope.
No.
There is no new variant, is there?
No, okay, also mention on
No,
something.
no speak of it on the television or nothing.
If you think
No.
America hasn't done atrocities or anything, newsflash, 1700s, 1800s, we gave blankets to Native Americans and we gave them smallpox.
Yes.
It's one example right there.
They want to forget that. They want modern examples now.
We can give more modern examples like the internment camps that the left actually instituted during World War II.
Yeah,
for
but
the
they
agents.
didn't actually hurt the people in those camps. They just kept them
No,
imprisoned.
but everybody else hurt those people.
Oh, how about the Red Scare? The Red Scare we did.
McCarthyism?
Yep.
You see,
Or
and then,
or
and then there's
even-
the civil rights movement, which the left throws underneath the rug because they were the responsible for it in the first place.
you know what the problem
Well-
with McCarthyism is? Now we have a reason to do it, and everyone's afraid to. Because if you put in a McCarthyism today, the DNC would cease to exist, and everybody in it would be at the end of a rope.
well, how about the what was the other one? The scare of 9/11. We went after people that were possibly, quote unquote, are possibly ties with that attack.
What about Building 7? Don't forget Building 7! Sorry, I can't do Alex Jones.
Oh, wait, oh yeah, a jet is possibly the one.
What about Building 7?
Yeah, very funny.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. I got to get through this because we were almost 2 hours in.
We're almost done. We're almost done.
No, we're
almost there.
not.
Shh. We are.
Let's
No,
go,
we're
let's go, let's
not. I hate to tell you this, but we're not. Okay, so we did the crematorium thing. Okay. Ukrainian forces, the President Zelensky and the mayor of Kiev, have announced that 18,000 Kalashnikov rifles have been distributed to the populace in the past 24 hours with express instructions to prepare for guerrilla warfare street to street. Now, when I read this, I got bombarded. A couple of my friends are founding members of Anonymous, like I used to be. And a couple of my other friends who are here or near here started sending me messages going, yo, you want to take a charter flight to Ukraine and pick up some free RPKs? And I was like, shut up, stop tempting me, you seductress. 18,000 Kalashnikov rifles. Do you think they have an NFA right now in Ukraine? I don't
No.
think so. I don't
Fuck
think
no.
so. I don't think so.
And most of those weapons are full auto, my friend.
Uh-huh. Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Do they have a crime problem in Ukraine right now? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't
Who
think
gives
so.
a shit about the mafia at this point?
Do they have an
I said-
ATF in the Ukraine? I don't think so.
No.
They have
At
a-
this point
They have a
in
Russian
Ukraine,
problem?
I don't think the criminals are worrying about breaking the law at this point when Russians are invading.
I don't think
they
an
need to-
NFA would have stopped what's going on right now.
No.
Oh, nice trick. Nice trick. We actually worked with the fucking Italian mafia during the Second World War to liberate Italy.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
No,
I
the
have to
point is-
ask
the
because
point is-
Patrick's talking in the chat. How much have you had to drink tonight, Patrick? Because 9/11 was not an inside job.
The point is, though, if at this point, forget the crime, go after the fucking bigger evil.
All right. Anyways,
Moving on.
Russia bad. Let's continue.
All right. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry 2:35 p.m. Central Standard Time. This would have been 10:35 p.m. Ukrainian local time. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry says that it has apprehended disguised saboteurs dressed in either plain clothes or as the Ukrainian police or military forces. Now, I'm sorry, but there was this rule that if you're a spy and you're captured as a spy, that the standard punishment was death. Right? We
Right.
did it. They do it. Are we shooting Russians in plain clothes right now? Like, are they running around
Probably
in
keeping them alive.
Well, here's the thing though. If the Ukraine and Russia had a Supreme Court, there would be an emergency trial right now to determine if an Adidas tracksuit is considered a military uniform or not. Because
Well,
plain clothes.
I think the reason they're keeping them alive for now
It's a bad joke, by the way.
is to beat all the pertinent information they can get out of them.
I don't know. I think what they're doing is they're dressing up as plain clothes either for Trojan horse operations or forward intel to find out where the majority of what they want is located so they can do maximum damage in the cover of night. Stands to reason. All right, let's keep going.
No, I think the Ukrainians are keeping them alive.
I'm just telling you, if you are walking around the streets of Kiev today with an Adidas tracksuit, you will be arrested as a spy and shot, because that is considered a uniform of foreign power. I can show you a picture on this server of Scott dressed up in an Adidas tracksuit with a balaclava. He should be shot as a spy.
That is not an Adidas tracksuit.
He should be shot as a spy.
Russians don't believe.
Not
in
changing my
freedom.
opinion. Kidding. I'm kidding.
Hey, I gotta hop off. You guys have fun the rest of the night.
All right, man. Thanks for
I'm gonna
coming.
work stuff.
I didn't
Have a
mean
good
to
one.
run it this long, but thanks for coming. We'll see you tomorrow.
Anytime, man. Yep, I'll be there.
All right, you're welcome to be here.
Thanks.
Okay. So we're almost done, guys. I'll be fair. We're getting there.
Almost.
We're almost there. Afterwards, 9 minutes later, John Kirby is the Pentagon spokesman. And he held a press conference to update the people on my new name is Yonda. Shut up, Patrick. I'm not doing conspiracy theories right now, but I can spin up a few. Anyway, John Kirby is the spokesman for the Pentagon. He held a press conference 9 minutes after the Ukrainian Defense Ministry had announced that there were people dressed up in plain clothes, spies and actors in Russia, or from Russia. And the press corps gobbled it up thinking, oh great, what can you tell us? We're starving for information. We need more updates. What did he have to tell us? Nothing. He had nothing to tell us. It was the shortest press conference that I can remember. The only thing that came out of his mouth that made me personally quirk an eyebrow was the Pentagon says that it is not clear if, quote, Putin has designs beyond the Ukraine. Now, pay attention here. Everything we told you yesterday has been parroted by the media today. It's almost as if they're listening to this podcast for their talking points, okay? Everything I'm telling you right now, they're not clear if Putin has designs behind the Ukraine. The Pentagon, our military intelligence super center, is telling the American people that it is unclear if Putin has designs beyond the Ukraine. What did we tell you yesterday? The Ukraine is a stepping stone. He already has Belarus. He already has Moldova. He would get the Ukraine and have the trifecta of Crimea right there. He would have entire control of the entire north part of the Black Sea, just with those three. Okay? That's the first part. Once he's done with that, his push will go on to the Baltic states, Latvia, Estonia, all those countries in the middle between Europe and Russia, right at the Urals. Okay? That's what he wants next. Because what he's trying to desperately do is redraw the map back to 1986. That's what he wants. Because everything that happened after the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Berlin Wall, when he lost his cush gig as head of the Stasi in East Germany, when he lost that gig, that's when the fire got lit under him. And he wants all of his shit back. He wants it all back. He's 70 years old. He may not be fully in control of his mental capacities. At least that's what's being argued with talking heads.
Legacy.
He's trying to rebuild his legacy, but he's also trying to get his shit back. And he thinks that this is his righteous moment to do so. Because American leadership is weak, because NATO has no stomach for war, because the media will play into whatever he demands, and because he has the might of the Russian military with a Chinese ally behind him. He thinks that he can get it all back. And the rest of the world is telling him, nah, bro. Why don't you stand in front of these crosshairs? We'll show you how quick we can set you free. Step inside, I set you free.
And
Extra points if you leave the quote from where I got that from in the comments below.
that's why I said that Finland really is worried, because they're worried they're next. Because remember, Putin he's Soviet, he's KGB through and through, and that whole war with Finland is a black mark on the Soviet Union.
So, if his playbook works out the way he wants, he had a plan to have Ukraine bend the knee probably before the end of the weekend, right? And then afterwards, he would turn the Eye of Sauron towards Estonia, Latvia, all the Baltic states, right? Once he had all those, realistically speaking, I bet he would probably thought this would all be nipped in the bud before Christmas. Because he'd think that who would stop him, right? The United States has a weak president. They don't want war. He just keeps saying that I just want my Comblock states back. Don't worry, Europe. I just want to get this back the way it used to be. And then we're cool. And supposedly thinks that Europe would just be like, okay, cool, whatever. Just don't fuck with Poland. That kind of thing, right? It ain't realistic.
Not every Comblock state wants to go back.
No Comblock state wants to go back. There's a reason why he's so angry. When it started to crumble in '86 and all those little satellite states kept leaning harder towards joining NATO, that means they were leaning away from looking back to the Iron Curtain. Every single nation that defected towards the West, he took as a personal insult, and he is enraged by it. He wants to crush all that. He thought, okay, yeah, you go right on ahead, and I'm just going to install a Soviet puppet that'll eventually bring you back through administration means, right? But the people got smart. They kicked out the puppet in Ukraine. Now Belarus, they're freaking hook, line, and sinker, fully committed to Stockholm Syndrome. They call Russia their brothers and shit because the grass is green and the money keeps flowing, right? Something was given to Belarus that keeps them so loyal. Moldova, same thing. You cut the head off of whatever they're feeding them, and they're going to turn real quick. They're going to be like, nope, we want to be part of the EU. Why don't you make us part of NATO, and then we'll never depend on that commie scum ever again. I said that because Patrick loves the word commie. He will probably want to push into Sweden and Finland, but not for years, because, he's got to reestablish the Iron Curtain first.
No, he could go after Finland.
Well, the problem is
go after Finland very easily.
The problem is, say he finishes campaign in Ukraine. He has to lick his wounds militarily. Personnel, hardware, missile cost, all of the stuff he had to spend in Ukraine, he's got to recoup that first before he pushes into the next place, and the next place, and the next place. He could probably topple something like Lithuania and Estonia and stuff like that in a short amount of time. When he gets down into Finland and Sweden, do you guys remember the white ghost of Finland?
Yep.
Samo Hayek.
Do you honestly think that Sweden and Finland are just going to be pushovers like Latvia? No. They have generations of stories of how they put boots to ass against the Russians. The Russians never succeeded. They never took the Scandinavian states. They tried. Good God, did they try. One man took out over 500 Russian soldiers and officers. One guy. And he did it in like, what, 60
and he
days?
lived to tell the tale.
Yeah. Well, he did it in like, what, 60 days? Do you know how demoralizing that is? 500
that's
bodies.
Why. That's why they would go after Finland, because
they couldn't get it.
You'd also see it as a black mark on the Soviet Union and an insult.
Yeah, but not until he gets all his Comblak states first. That would be what he would do after.
He may cut his losses and getting half the Comblak states back, and then attacking those that have.
No, because they're all in his logistics path, and he has to have all of them.
Here's the thing, Sean. Look at the map I posted in.
I
War
can't.
never
It'll
changes.
break the stream.
Basically, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey.
Yeah.
All NATO members.
Right, and that falls back on the whole idea of 1 into 30. Article 5.
He attacks any of them, Article 5.
Right. Which is why he has to lick his wounds from Ukraine before he can even try to push those other ones. See,
no,
the thing is he would try to put political pressure on the other ones to make them want to willingly just join. Maybe he doesn't have to do it militarily.
Well, remember, he doesn't have the northern part of the Middle East either. You know, he needs Kazakhstan back. He needs Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan.
He can't have it. He can't have it. I mean, he wasted so much. Well, not him, but his country wasted so much time in Afghanistan.
Soviet Union again.
And they had to turn tail and run. You can't defeat a people who have no willingness to lose. Like, those people are so resourceful and so brilliant. They didn't have to beat him man versus man. They beat him man versus the country, the terrain, the weather, the topography. I mean, these were Tony Stark built this in a cave with scraps, right? Same thing. He was fighting Bedouins. He was fighting people with Snap-Hans rifles from 1790 and Enfield rifles from World War I because they knew where to deploy them to be the most effective and the most demoralizing. They're brilliant people. They're fascinating. Like, world powers can learn something from those places because they thought that they had technology on their side and they still left embarrassed and wounded, right? You want to talk about having a black mark on your history? Putin should probably want to drop Tsar bombas across the entire field of Afghanistan then. Turn it into a giant glowing sea because of how insulting that was to his people. But he won't. He just won't. His priorities are elsewhere.
Chinese have an interest in it right now.
Well, no, his priorities are elsewhere. He wants to go west. He wants China to go east.
U.S. officials have confirmed that Ukraine has shot down a second IL-76.
You're spoiling. We haven't gotten there yet. Shut up. All right, we're going to have to get through this quickly then, because you want to spoil.
Hurry up then.
Fine. All right. Zelensky says that Russian forces will storm Kiev under the cover of darkness. Now, this was what he declared at 4:43 p.m. Central Standard Time. This would have been 12:43 a.m. Saturday morning Ukrainian local time. Okay, this was after the power plant had been struck 5 times. So basically what I'm saying is Zelensky was stating the obvious. So thank you, Comrade Obvious. Then...
No, Zelensky's not a comrade.
Oh, it gets better. Oh, it gets so much better. So later on in the day before... Because I don't know if you know this, but the DNC likes to drop bullshit at rush hour on a Friday afternoon. And in keeping with that tradition, Nancy Turkey Neck Pelosi, with her $50,000 worth of ice cream in her freezer, opens her useless garbage disposal, known as her mouth, about Biden and the Ukraine. And she's on the record saying, I think it's really important for people to understand the brilliance with which President Biden is conducting this. This is a man who served decades as chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He knows the arena. He knows the personalities. End quote.
He knows how to do absolutely nothing.
Wait a minute. I'm going to work off of what she's saying here. If you take into account all his years of service, all 48 years of public service, his debacle of the Afghanistan pullout now makes perfect sense. Because his service began literally 1 year before the fall of Saigon.
So we can blame the fall.
Oh, wait, no, he's a brilliant guy, dude. He's a brilliant man. He knows personalities. He was the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He was put into power a year before the fall of Saigon. And then he repeated his performance in Afghanistan. And now he's got Ukraine in his lap. I mean, it all starts to make sense. If you need any more proof that Joseph R. Biden isn't a categorical failure in the art of pulling out, look no further than his son Hunter Biden. That's all you need to see. In every way, this guy just can't pull out.
Patrick,
How about
Patrick
John Kerry? How about John Kerry? Have you ever seen his
you said something
testimony in front of Congress during Vietnam?
Yeah, well, right now he's
a
non-issue.
want to look that little nugget up.
Right now he's
a non-issue. Something really stupid today too. So
Kerry,
yep.
or
something very stupid every time he opens his freaking mouth.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Kerry.
All right. So, in keeping with what Scott was spoiling, 7:54 p.m. Central Standard Time, which would have been 3:54 a.m. Ukrainian local time. So this would have been 3 hours ago now. Ukrainian military claims to have shot down a Russian transport plane close to the city of Vasilkiv. It was an Ilyushin Il-76 transport plane that had a full complement of 150 soldiers on board. One plane, 150 deaths, plus the pilot, plus the co-pilot. Probably plus an in-flight engineer.
And any loadmaster, yeah.
And a loadmaster. Let's just say an Il-76 has a crew of at least 7 to 10 people. I think that's fair.
Yep.
So 160 guys died. And then I think you just said they confirmed a second one came down. So that's 320. On top of the 2,800 already from day one. Ukrainians are putting boots to ass. When you start to look at... Now, I know not all of you are into this, but I am. If you start to look at boxing champions from the Ukraine, you will start to see a pattern that these people know how to put boots to ass. Because they gave us Vitaly Klitschko. They gave us Vladimir Klitschko. Twin brothers who were heavyweight champions that were almost both undefeated for over a decade. And they gave us Triple G, who also was almost completely undefeated and a champion in his own right. These people don't know defeat. They know perseverance. They know absolute victory. This is the kind of people you want in NATO. They're brilliant. And they speak the language of your enemy. Anyway. So, yeah, okay. According to what you said earlier, 2 Il-76s shot down. Which proves 2 things. 1, Ukrainian military's, or Air Force, is not wiped out. And 2, Ukrainian air defenses also not wiped out. Hey! Pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're going to make the Russians bleed.
So, after that, there was a story where the press, because you've got guys like Trey Yingst and many others. Trey Yingst works for Fox News. He's a young guy, very bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and ambitious. Very good journalist, though, and very brave. And he puts himself in some pretty dangerous places. And a lot of times he's not even wearing his helmet. And then the other hosts are like, Trey, stop for a second and put on your helmet. And then he does. Like, this dude's brave. Stupid, but brave. So there was these interviews of civilians being interviewed in bomb shelters, also known as the metro tunnels of Ukraine, from episode 1 of the War Room's pictures, basically. And he interviewed somebody, and the guy was basically saying, quote, I can tell you that I am here with an awful lot, a group of really angry people. They believe that if he occupies the country, Putin, that he has another thing coming for him. Apparently, according to official stats, there has been 2,800 Russian troops killed in Ukraine just today. That guy's name was Mikhailo Vinitsky. See, I got it right this time. Mikhailo Vinitsky. He was the associate professor at the National University of Kiev Military Academy. I think he would have some street cred. I think he knows what he's talking about. That happened at 5:41 Central Standard Time, which would have been 1:41 a.m. local time. So, sorry, I got the timeline a little warped there. But he was interviewed saying that. He basically confirmed about the 2,800 troops killed on the first day. Or, sorry, the second day. 2,800 on the second day. Because he was already talking on the morning of the third day in his time zone. So it gives you a glimpse into the mindset and the resolve of the Ukrainian people, everyday people. This guy is a professor. He's an educator. Vitaly Klitschko was a boxer, now become the mayor of Kiev, which is the capital city. That would be like being the governor of the state of your state from where you're listening from if you're in the United States. That's a tall order. These people don't know defeat. They don't want defeat. They're proud, they're patriotic, they're separatist from communist rule, and they made the best of it, and the world recognized them as such. The only problem now is the world, I won't say that the world turned their backs on them, but the world's not really helping them where they need to, like in the way they need to. Had this been a UN nation and Russia moved in, there would be a 30-nation coalition of troops amassed on the border fighting right now. The casualty numbers would be higher, but the anti-aircraft defenses would be better. Russia's air power would cease to exist in 48 hours. This would have been over in the air in 48 hours.
Ooh.
And then anyone dumb enough to move in columns of armored when you have air superiority, you would have the highway of death all over again. Like
I was about to point out, between A-10s and Apaches,
yeah,
they'd be having a field day.
yeah, and between B-52s dropping cluster bombs, like, just thanks for
Technically, we
coming.
don't use
Try the
cluster bombs
fish.
anymore.
I mean, think about this. If that had happened, and we had unleashed hell on Russia, right? The question would be, how quick can we capture Putin to put him into an Interpol jail to stand trial to be executed? I mean, it wouldn't be months. We'd be talking days.
But wouldn't China intervene regarding that?
You
They have a pact.
You see, that's the thing.
Quote unquote, quotations pact.
Xi Jinping plays the long game, and he has done that now for almost a decade. And what he's been doing is he's been very intently watching what's been going on in the Ukraine, and he hasn't acted yet, and he hasn't reacted yet. But what he did today was he made a phone call to reassert his support for Russia. But that's like saying our thoughts and prayers are with the people of the Ukraine. It's meaningless. It's weightless. So if Putin got put in his place and he was captured as a war criminal and executed, Xi Jinping would probably stop his advance towards Taiwan. He would be like, "Nope, I don't want that smoke." Apparently NATO has still got their shit together. He wouldn't take the risk. He would leave Putin out high and dry, and he would just wait to see what happens, because that's exactly what he did up to this point. And right now, he's using the words of a leader who's recognizing a stalemate, because he just said, "I support Putin." Putin's not winning. He got his nose bloodied very badly. In terms of military prowess, this is an embarrassment. A nation as large as Russia can't take over a nation as small as the Ukraine. Population-wise, military strength-wise, you name it. You name your platitude. He can't defeat them. Now, over time and through attrition, numerically, he will occupy Kiev. It's an inevitability, because NATO's not going to stop it. And the Ukrainian people are going to have a very good case to resent us for it. They will say, "You could have stopped this suffering had you just put down your stupid doctrines and put down that madman and stopped him from killing us. Our leader that we loved died for nothing because you wouldn't help us. Vitaly Klitschko died because you wouldn't help us. And now we're being executed and Stasi'd by the Soviet Union, and now you're going to come in and help us?" They're going to hate us. We're building a case of resentment right now. And this is going to affect generations. This isn't going to go away. These people are going to hate us. Children are going to watch their parents get executed. And then when Uncle Sam walks in saying, "Hey kid, I saved you, have a chocolate bar," that kid's going to be like, "Fuck you, where were you a week ago when my dad got shot?" This is how you breed hatred. Anyway, I don't want to sound like a warmonger, but the fact of the matter is this, we should have handled this very differently. And because we are led by idiots, this is going to drag out, and a lot of good people, and a lot of young people, and a lot of brilliant minds are going to die needlessly. But that's what war is, isn't it? Because war never changes. And I bet you thought I was going to play the music and say that the podcast is over. But it's not just yet, because I've got one other piece of really scary news for you. 6:50 p.m. Central Standard Time. That would be, what, 5 hours ago? 4 hours ago. There was an emergency action message that said that radiation levels in Chernobyl have spiked inside the exclusion zone after the Russians have taken over. We talked about this yesterday. This is a reality that nobody wants to hear. Either they cracked open the sarcophagus or they opened it. And they are now playing with radioactive materials because they're going to use them on people. They're either going to use them in dirty weapons, or they're going to use them in the water, or they're going to use them by, I don't know, blowing up the entire area and putting up a cloud of radiation. This is what Putin had warned the world. I will show you a level of warfare that has never been witnessed before. When he said that, the world should have immediately realized that they are now dealing with a madman. Because that is not the tone of a rational human being. That is the tone of a person who doesn't give a shit who dies as long as he gets what he wants. That's scary. And immediately after that, about an hour or so after that, the Ukrainian capital announced that they were under attack from every direction, and now there is fighting street to street. We have now reached the point where the Ukrainian infantry are fighting in the streets in the middle of the night at 4:17 a.m. local time. As of right now, when I'm telling you this in this podcast, It is now 7:11 a.m. They have been fighting street to street, man to man, for 3 hours in the middle of the night with no sleep because they've been dealing with this shit all day. This is a country of what? 5 million, 6 million people? No, 30 million people. This is a country of 30 million people with a military of not even 1% of their population. These guys are tired. They're exhausted. They're fighting their hearts out. They're dying from exhaustion in just kinetic warfare. And nobody's helping them. We're patting them on the head. We're sending them helmets. We're sending them javelin missiles. Okay, that's good. We're sending them harpoons. But what we're not doing, we're not providing them air cover, and that's what they need the most. We're not knocking out their tanks. They're having to do it themselves. We're sitting in fucking Germany eating fucking sausages and drinking Weizenstephaner. Right? That's what we're doing right now while they're dying. And what do you think's going to happen when they're done killing all those people? They're going to move on to the next place. And guess what? We're going to sit there and watch that too? How many more countries are going to fall under the Iron Curtain before we finally go, we can't sit down and watch this anymore? And then once we do get involved, how many of those countries worth of people and their children who saw their parents die are going to hate us for the next 40 to 60 years? This is war. War never changes, and what is old is new once again, and it's disgusting. And with that, I will play this music. Because we've run 2.5 hours, and if you stayed around this long, I commend you, and I thank you for watching and listening, and maybe I did rant a bit, and I apologize, but I tried to keep it factual. I tried not to make a mockery of the situation, because it's dangerous, and it's scary, and war is frightening, and it's as serious as a heart attack, and I'm glad that I was able to share this with you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Maybe check out my other playlist, see if my other interests are of interest to you, but we will continue to do this for as long as you're willing to listen, and we will cover this every day until it's over. My sleep be damned, my panelist patience be damned. But thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.